وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الذين يتبعون الرسول النبي الأمي الذي يجدونه مكتوبا عندهم في التوراة والإنجيل يأمرهم بالمعروف وينهاهم عن المنكر ويحل لهم الطيبات ويحرم عليهم الخبائث ويضع عنهم إصرهم والأغلال التي كانت عليهم فالذين آمنوا به وعزروه ونصروه واتبعوا النور الذي أنزل معه أولئك هم المفلحون. Those who follow the messenger, the prophet, the immaculate one, whom they find mentioned in the Torah and the gospel, which are with them. He enjoins on them good and forbids them evil, and makes lawful for them the good things, and forbids them the bad, and removes from them their burden and the shackles that were upon them. So those who shall believe in him, and honor, and support him, and help him, and follow the light that has been sent down with him, these shall prosper. One of the responsibilities that was given to the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was to remove the burdens and shackles that were upon people. The topic of my exegesis, my dars today, is Islam and slavery. Slavery, in simple terms, is the act of subjugating someone or a group of people against their will to one's service or to the service of another nation. Slavery has been with man for so many years. From time immemorial, history tells us that there were incidents of slavery. For instance, one of the most glaring ones that we all know of is that of the Israelites under the rule in Egypt during the time of Hazrat Musa alayhi salam. Apart from that, even before Islam, slavery existed in Persia, which is now known as Iran. It existed in Greece. I've already mentioned Egypt. It existed under the Roman Empire, and so on and so forth. But then even after the coming of Islam, those who had not seen the light of Islam yet still continued or began slavery in another form. We saw another wave of slavery during the transatlantic slave trade. Vasco da Gama, from the North Atlantic Ocean, journeying all the way to the North Indian Ocean to begin slavery among the people of the subcontinent of India. It was that slavery that also came to Africa and China and the people of that area. And then from the other side, we had Christopher Columbus going to the southern parts of America, also to establish slavery there. The system of slavery demanded that you use the people for your own labor without any pay or recompense. Slaves were subjected to all forms of ill treatment. They had no right to own a property. They had no right to make their own decisions. They had no right to inherit, or they had no right to inheritance. They were actually commodities. They were treated like commodities that were rather inherited. And so if I had a slave and I pass away, I could leave it or leave him to the person who inherits me. They were sold like commodities. A comedian recently, in a stand-up comedy, when he stood in front of the whites, he being an African, jokingly said that some few years back, this scene that you are seeing here wouldn't have been that of a comedy, but it would have been an auction. He being the object that would have been auctioned, and the whites sitting there being those that would be buying or bidding to buy him as a commodity. Though he mentioned it as a joke, but that is the reality in our recent past. We all have seen the dungeons in Cape Coast Castle, Elmina Castle, and all these other castles and forts, the kind of treatments that were meted out to our forefathers, and so on and so forth. If the slave master decided to treat the slave in a particular way, nobody had the right to bring him to books. Nobody had the right to question him in any ways. So Islam came in at a point where this kind of slavery was also existing in the subcontinent of, in the Arabian Peninsula. They were very much deeply rooted in slavery. Islam tackled it systematically because something that is so deeply rooted, it was going to be difficult always that you bring an abrupt end to it. There are other factors that would make it counterproductive, and I'll come to that later in my discourse. But one of the ways that people were enslaved was through warfare. And so the people who win the war will take captives to their place, and then they will become the slaves. First and foremost, Islam discouraged warfare as a whole. And it was only when it is in self-defense that you were allowed to, you were allowed to battle. And so the process by which you can acquire the slaves was targeted to be controlled. That's the first thing. And then Islam laid rules and regulations when it comes to labor. You see, when the slaves were gotten, they formed an integral part of the labor force of the countries which are now the Western world, the advanced countries. At the time as well, the various empires had these slaves, and they formed the chunk of their labor force. So Islam then instituted mechanisms. For instance, the Holy Prophet ﷺ said, if you are working with someone, you have to pay him. You have to pay the person. And in fact, the payment is so important that even if it is your own son or your relative that you are working with, in business terms, you have to agree on something with him and pay him. And it is also very important to pay, and pay in time, such that the Holy Prophet ﷺ said, you should pay the person before his sweat dries. Meaning, when a person is toiling, you should pay him before the sweat dries. And also, it should be proportionate to whatever efforts that he is putting into the job. This is diametrically opposite to the slavery that we know, because the slaves were not paid. There was no arrangement whatsoever to pay the slaves. So, also, we need to realize that slavery was not just a practice. It was an ideology. It was an understanding. It was a concept that had existed within the people. One underlining cause of this concept or ideology is racism. Racism. The fact that a particular people will consider themselves to be superior than another people, or consider other people to be inferior to them. This caused or this gave oxygen to the concept of slavery. So Islam did not just tackle the practice of slavery, it tackled the ideologies and the beliefs that were attached to it. So when it comes to superiority as a person or as a race, what does Islam say about it? First and foremost, Allah the Almighty says in Surah An-Nisa, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء. O ye people, fear your Lord, who created you from a single soul and created them from its mate, and from them twain spread many men and women, and fear Allah in whose name you appeal to one another. So Allah the Almighty mentions the origin of the entirety of mankind to be from a single soul. So that if we understand that we are all from the same origin, what is the cause for superiority? What makes you superior than the other when we are all from the same source? Another verse that tackles the concept of racism, because the question arises that what about the colors? In fact, this time we know that people who are whites sometimes discriminated against those who are blacks. South Africa's apartheid or apathy is a classical example of that. So does the color difference confer any form of superiority over or to a person over the other? Allah the Almighty says in Surah Ar-Rum, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ خَلْقُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَاخْتِلَافُ أَلْسِنَتِكُمْ وَأَلْوَانِكُمْ إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِلْعَالِمِينَ. And among his signs is the creation of the heavens and the earth, and the diversity of your tongues and colors. This is the main point. The diversity of your tongues and colors. What are they? In that surely are signs for those who possess knowledge. So this is a sign from Allah the Almighty. He didn't mention anywhere that because of color, a certain person or a particular race could have superiority over the other. Then what is the reason, therefore, why mankind was divided into tribes and sub-tribes? The Quran answers this question as well. Allah the Almighty says in Surah Al-Hujurat, يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم إن الله عليم خبير. The Quran is so wonderful. Allah the Almighty says, O mankind, we have created you from a male and a female, and we have made you into tribes and sub-tribes, that you may recognize one another. Meaning, the demarcation of men into tribes and sub-tribes is just for recognition, that this person is from this tribe, there is this tribe, and there is that tribe, and then we know our limits and bounds and cultures and everything. It is for that recognition and identity, the identity of a race. That is why Allah demarcated men into tribes and sub-tribes. So the question of superiority or inferiority, what is it then that actually, in reality, confers superiority to somebody? Allah mentions it. He first debunks the concept that possibly the tribe or the race of a person can make him superior. He says no. The reason why it was created was for identity. Now, the next part of the verse answers the question that then what exactly confers superiority on a person? Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. Verily, the most honorable among you in the sight of Allah is he who is the most righteous among you. So it is righteousness, after all, that makes a person superior. It's not your race. It's not your ethnic group. It's not really your family. In the sight of Allah, it is your righteousness. And the good thing about righteousness is that if you are truly righteous, you would desist from looking down on any person or people. In fact, Allah the Almighty says, "La tuzaku anfusakum, huwa a'lamu biman ittaqa." You shouldn't yourself boast that you are righteous. It is Allah who rather knows the one who is righteous. And so if this is the case, then actually the question of superiority or inferiority will be left to Allah the Almighty, because as a person, you can't boast that you are even righteous. And righteousness is the measure or the yardstick for superiority. And so the pillars or the foundations of racism was brought down with these verses of the Holy Quran in such a splendor, in such a wonderful manner as the world would have never seen before. The last sermon of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam also encapsulates a masterpiece of admonishments that dealt with slavery. The important thing to note here is that when a person is about to die, he does the most important things that he knows that he needs to do. If he knows really that he's about to die, he does the most important things before he leaves. And if it is something that he says, that also is the most profound thing, the most sincere thing that he actually wants to say. Many people would do that in the form of sharing their properties or giving the most powerful advice to his parents, to his children before he leaves. And what did the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam say? The last sermon, which is the Khutbah Hajjatul Wada, which was delivered by the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam on the 9th of Dhul Hijjah in the 10th Hijri, which is equal to 632 AD, on the plains of Arafah. The Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam made a statement that will shake the foundations of slavery till the end of time. He says, all mankind is from Adam. There is no superiority of an Arab over a non-Arab, or a white over a black, except by piety. All mankind is from Adam. There is no superiority of an Arab over an Arab, or a white over a black, except by piety. When you read the sermons of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there is a book called Khutabul Mustafa. That is the sermons of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Many a times, he would chip in statements like this: An-nasu min Adam, wa inna Adam la min turab. Mankind is from Adam, and Adam is from the dust. Mankind is from Adam, and Adam is from the dust. Telling you that you are not superior, you are eventually from the dust. So what at all is all this about? And you go back to the dust. So what at all is all this greed about? You see? So that was the sermon of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the Muslims came to understand that slavery is not an option for them, except that there were already slaves. Some Muslims, they became Muslims when they had slaves. Some came in with these slaves to become Muslims. So the society already had slaves that were existing. There wasn't expansion. So now the question was how to, deal with the ones that were already existing. First and foremost, as I mentioned, that Islam took a very systematic and calculated approach to the abolishment of slavery, because you can abolish it abruptly, but slavery is a mindset. And so if that mindset is not tackled, you'll abolish it by law or by whatever means, and yet people will be enslaved in their minds. And later I'll talk more about that. But if you look at our society critically now, you realize that you still find people who are still having that inferiority complex and look at the West with that superiority complex as would exist between a master and his slave, which means that though slavery has been abolished, but on the minds of people, they still have the colonial powers to be their masters in practice. So the measures that Islam took to abolish slavery, the first of it was to improve the livelihood of the slaves, the standard of living of the slaves. And so the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is reported to have said, and this is narrated by Hazrat Abu Zar. He says that your slaves are your brethren. Look at the choice of wording. Your slaves are your brethren. Give them same food as you feed on, and clothe them as you clothe yourself. Do not give them such work that is beyond their power, and if you do, help them. This is such a beautiful injunction, and I want us to break it down. It has very remarkable elements. The first thing that the Holy Prophet Islam said was that feed them, give them the same food as you feed yourself, and then clothe them as you clothe yourself. Food and clothing over the years have been a measure of social class, such that if a person wears a certain standard of clothes, then he is deemed to be of a certain standard. They say you dress as you want to be addressed. Even now, we have it in our society. And food as well. You know, the social classes demand that those of a higher class would eat certain forms of food, and other forms of food are deemed to be inferior. So if a person is found eating those foods, it means he belongs to the inferior class. And here you get the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying that no, that segregation shouldn't be there. So when it comes to clothing, they should wear the same. And when it comes to feeding, you should feed them with that which you yourself you feed. So that you don't give them any substandard clothes, you don't give them any substandard food to eat, which will be detrimental to their health as well. Whatever you are feeding on is what you are giving them. And note that the Holy Prophet said they are your brethren. That is so much against the concept of slavery that we know, where the relationship between the slave and the slave master cannot be classified in any way, shape, or form to be that of brethren. It's just simply business, master and a slave. But here, the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying that they are your brethren. Then the other thing which is very notable here is that when slaves were being used for labor, the kind of work that was given them was mostly inhumane and even beyond the capacity of human beings. And so if they also falter, then they are again beaten for that. This is what we know of slavery. On the contrary, the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is instructing that don't burden them beyond their capacity. And even more beautiful to this injunction is the fact that he said, and if you give them a work which is more than their capacity, you should help them. It's wonderful. That also means that the kind of job that you give the slave, the kind of work that you give the slave should be one that you yourself, you deem fit to do. Because if it gets to the point that you have to help him, you have to help him. And so if it's not fit for you, it's not fit for the slave. Or if it's not fit for the slave and you think it's not fit for you, then it's not also fit for the slave. So this directly debunks the ideology in the master's mind that he is superior. At the same time, it is debunking the ideology in the slave's mind that he is inferior. The like of this teaching I have not found in any other religion. Let's look at how some of the companions implemented these teachings. The companions were very particular, and they would do as the Holy Prophet ﷺ say, harfan bil harf, word for word. Hazrat Ubadah bin Walid, radiallahu anhu, he says he once met Abdul Yusr, who is a companion of the Holy Prophet ﷺ. He was accompanied by a slave. Abdul Yusr, was wearing a stripped garment and a Yemenite garment. Two garments. One is stripped or striped, and one is a Yemenite garment. And his slave also wore the same. So he was asked that, why didn't you give one of the garments to your slave and you take one? If you give the Yemenite garment to your slave, you could take the striped one. Or if you take the if you give the striped one to your slave, you could take the Yemenite one. Abdul Yusr radiallahu anhu replied very wonderfully. He says, my dear nephew, my eyes have seen and my ears have heard and my mind remembers the Holy Prophet ﷺ saying, clothe them the way as you clothe yourself. Wonderful. So, in actual fact, the companions, in implementing this injunction of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, did not only think of raising the standard of clothing that they give the slaves. One thing is, somebody could understand that, well, the Holy Prophet ﷺ wants the standard of the clothing to be high. And so I can wear the Yemenite one, and for as long as the striped one is not inferior, I'll give it to the slave, and that's it. But they went a step further, that it should be the same. It should be the same. And so Abdul Yusr, he didn't want to give one to the slave and he would wear one, which would make it different. And so he would take half of the Yemenite one, half of the striped one, and give half of the Yemenite one and half of the striped one to the slave. Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu is also reported to have done this, that he went to buy a garment and accompanying him was his slave. He bought one for himself and bought the same garment for his slave. So that was how the companions were wonderfully implementing the injunctions of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But it was not the injunctions of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam alone. The Quran also raised the standards of the slaves. Let us take an example. Allah the Almighty says in Surah Al-Baqarah, وَلَا تَنْكِحُوا الْمُشْرِكَاتِ حَتَّى يُؤْمِنْ وَلَأَمَةٌ مُؤْمِنَةٌ خَيْرٌ مِّن مُشْرِكَةٍ وَلَوْ أَعْجَبَتْكُمْ وَلَا تُنْكِحُوا الْمُشْرِكِينَ حَتَّى يُؤْمِنُوا وَلَعَبْدٌ مُؤْمِنٌ خَيْرٌ مِّن مُشْرِكٍ وَلَوْ أَعْجَبَكُمْ. Allah the Almighty says, and marry not idolatrous women until they believe. Even a believing bondwoman, a believing slave woman, is better than an idolatress, although she may highly please you. And give not believing women in marriage to idolaters until they believe. Even a believing slave is better than an idolater, although he may highly please you. These call to the fire, but Allah calls to heaven and to forgiveness by his command, and he makes his signs clear to the people that they may remember. So in this verse of the Holy Quran, Allah the Almighty encourages the believers to even marry the slaves, be they women or men. So that opened the door of intermarriages to happen. This is a wonderful way of stopping it, because you cannot call your wife a slave or your husband a slave. And so when you keep intermarrying, then at a point in time, you would have married you would have intermarried with the slaves, and they would cease to be slaves. You will not continue regarding them as such. And one of the things that are notable here is that Islam specifically also made it easy for people to marry slaves or people that their right hand possessed. So there were certain things that you were required to do that may come off as burden or responsibilities that may prevent people from marrying in general, or free women. Those things were reduced when it came to marrying of slaves, such that it would encourage them to marry them more and more. So if their standards are raised, the question still remains that would they still remain as slaves? As I mentioned, the intermarriages, that is one way that the slaves were then being taken into the society without remaining slaves. Now, there were other ways and steps that were instituted to abolish slavery. We have the commendatory measures, we have the mandatory measures, and also we had the system of mukataba. I'll take them one after the other. We start with the commendatory measures. The commendatory measures were those that were put in place just to encourage people to free slaves. When you free slaves, then you are commended. That's why it's called the commendatory. A typical example is in Surah Al-Balad. Allah the Almighty says, وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا الْعَقَبَةُ فَكُّ رَقَبَةٍ. That, and what should make thee know what the ascent is? Aqaba, meaning the high mountains or mountain roads, ascending which one can reach very high status of spirituality or divine nearness. And Allah the Almighty is asking that what will make thee know what that way is, the way that will make you get that high rank in spirituality. Can you guess the answer? The first of it is that it is the freeing of a slave. The first on the list is that it is the freeing of a slave. So that is not a small price for freeing slave. Allah the Almighty gives his own nearness. Can you imagine? His own nearness as a price for freeing a slave. Also in Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah the Almighty says, وَآتَى الْمَالَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ ذَوِي الْقُرْبَى وَالْيَتَامَى وَالْمَسَاكِينَ وَابْنَ السَّبِيلِ وَالسَّائِلِينَ وَفِي الرِّقَابِ. Allah the Almighty says, it is not righteousness that you turn your faces to the east or to the west. But truly, righteousness is he who believes in Allah and the last day. Allah the Almighty is mentioning the things that makes a person righteous. So let's listen. He who believes in Allah and the last day, and the angels, and the book, and the prophets, and spends his money for the love of him, on the kindred, and the orphans, and the needy, and the wayfarer, and those who ask for charity, and for ransoming the captives or slaves, and for ransoming the captives of slaves. So Allah is saying that this is what is called true piety. And among the features, among the things that are to be done, is to spend money for ransoming the slaves. Even the states, that spending of money to ransom the slaves was not only for individuals, but even the Islamic State was also mandated to use part of the money from the Baytul Mal to free some slaves. And so when you read Surah At-Tawbah, where Allah the Almighty talks about those who are eligible for sadaqah, innama sadaqat lil fuqara, you come and see that riqab there, that it is also to be used for freeing slaves, those who are entangled and under these shackles. So one of the surahs that I mentioned, Surah Al-Balad, is it was revealed in Makkah. Surah Al-Baqarah, which is the other one that I have mentioned, was predominantly revealed in Medina. And so you realize that in Makkah, and both Makkah and Medina, the issue of the slavery continued, and it was being gradually debunked. Hazrat Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu is reported to have said that the Holy Prophet ﷺ said, whoever frees a slave, God will forbid him from the hellfire limb for limb. MashaAllah. Whoever frees a slave, God will forgive him from the hellfire limb for limb. Hazrat Barra also said, the Holy Prophet ﷺ, when asked that what work will take one straight to paradise, he said, the question is small, but it's very heavy. Then he answered by saying that emancipate a slave, free a slave. And if you cannot do it alone, do it jointly. It was so important that if even you alone, you cannot afford to free a slave, do it jointly. Let me say here that the reason why the question of being able to afford it or not being able to afford it arises here is that it's not only the slaves that you yourself you possess that are being talked about here, but you are also being encouraged to even free slaves, pay for the emancipation of other people's slaves. And so if you cannot afford yourself to pay for a slave to be freed, you can do it jointly. People come together, put their monies together, and go and do it as if they are going to invest in something. They are investing in their future. If that is something that can save you from the hellfire, then you are indeed investing in your future. Let me take us back to history a bit. When the Holy Prophet ﷺ got married to Hazrat Khadija, radiallahu anha, Hazrat Khadija had so many slaves, and she gave everything to the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. The Holy Prophet himself, he led by example. He freed, as we all know, he freed all of the slaves. So 63 slaves were freed by the Holy Prophet ﷺ. One remarkable thing happened, which we all know as well. That is the incident about Hazrat Zayd, who was one of the slaves that the Holy Prophet ﷺ freed from the slaves of Hazrat Khadija radiallahu anha. But due to the kind of treatment that the Holy Prophet ﷺ gave him and the love that existed between them, somebody who has been freed as a slave, the first thing that you think of is to go back home. Rather, Hazrat Zayd had the opportunity that his parents or family members came to take him away. And then he chose the Holy Prophet ﷺ over going back to his house with his family members. How many of us can treat people who are under us, our subordinate, in a way such that even if they had to choose between us and their homes, they would choose us over going back to their homes? This is indeed an example and a food for thought for us all to think about. So I'm going to give examples of some of the companions who spent a lot of money in freeing slaves. And also generally those who freed slaves that they also had. The Holy Prophet ﷺ, as I have mentioned, freed 63 slaves. Hazrat Aisha radiallahu anha, who was also the wife of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, she freed 67 slaves. 67 slaves. Hazrat Abbas, the uncle of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu radiallahu anhu, he freed 70 slaves. Hakim bin Hizam, Hazrat Hakim bin Hizam radiallahu anhu, he freed 100 slaves. Hazrat Abdullah bin Umar radiallahu anhu, he freed 1,000 slaves. The number keeps rising. Hazrat Abdul Rahman bin Auf freed 3,000 slaves, according to the history. Hazrat Uthman bin Affan, this is very striking. Hazrat Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anhu freed 20,000 slaves on one day alone. In a day, he freed 20,000 slaves. And so you can imagine the number of slaves that he had, freed in his whole life. It's not the entire life. It's only one day that he freed 20,000 slaves. So you can imagine Hazrat Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu freed so many slaves. I don't have the number, but we all know that he spent a chunk of his wealth. In fact, yes, some history suggests that he freed about 8 slaves, but they were so expensive that the amount that he spent on them would be equivalent to the amount that some of these people who freed thousands of slaves also spent on the thousands of them. So Hazrat Abu Bakr also was at the forefront of freeing slaves. it comes in the history that sometimes he would want to free a slave, and the slave master, just to make it difficult for him, will keep increasing the price of the slave. And he will say that whatever it takes, he will free him. He'll keep paying until it is all done. So the ones that I've mentioned here, if you calculate, that alone is 32,300 slaves that were freed. Imagine 32,300 slaves. These were the commendatory measures and how the Muslims wholeheartedly contributed to it. Now let me go to the mandatory. The mandatory means it's compulsory. And these were reformatory measures that were used as injunctions for punishment to people who did certain things that were bad. Hazrat Suwaid, radiallahu anhu, he says that we are 7 brothers, and we had one slave. The 7 brothers, they had one slave. One of his brothers became very angry and slapped a slave. When the Holy Prophet ﷺ got to know about it, he was unhappy. And then he said, free that slave. Free the slave. Which means that the punishment for slapping the slave was that you should free him. And also, if you maltreated a slave in any way, you would have to free him. Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu also says that freeing a slave was set as a punishment for beating them. So that was compulsory. It's not that you if you want, you then free the slave. No. For as long as you have beaten the slave, you have to free him because of the wayward behavior that you exhibited. So in one way, it was guaranteeing the good livelihood of the slaves and also making sure that some of them would be freed. The next system that was put in place was a system of mukataba. The system of mukataba is a very wonderful system which needs some attention. It was a contractual agreement made between a slave and his master. Meaning that even at that time, Islam regarded slaves so much that they could even enter into contracts. Imagine when they could not even inherit. And now we are talking about contracts. They could enter into contracts. And what contracts is this? The Holy Quran says that وَالَّذِينَ يَبْتَغُونَ الْكِتَابَ مِمَّا مَلَكَتْ أَيْمَانُكُمْ فَكَاتِبُوهُمْ إِنْ عَلِمْتُمْ فِيهِمْ خَيْرًا. And such as desire a deed of manumission in writing among your slaves, such as desire a deed of manumission from among those whom your right hands possess, write it for them if you know any good in them. And not only that, and give them out of the wealth of Allah which He has bestowed upon you. So if there was a slave who wanted to enter into this contract, you had to go into that contract with him. So what was this contract all about? The contract was that a price is put on the slave, and the slave works to pay that contract. In our modern day context, we might want to term it as work and pay. Work and pay. But just that in this case, you are not paying for a commodity like a car or something. You are paying for your own freedom. So the moment the contract is entered into, the slave is free to go because he has to work and pay. So he's no more going to work for you, the master. He goes out, he works, and then pays. Allah the Almighty said that, in alimtum fihim khayra, if you see any good in them. So the question arises that what does it mean if you see any good in them? The good which has been referred to here is the ability of a trade scale. In other words, it becomes obligatory to settle the mukatabat with such slaves who are knowledgeable in a trade or skill, or who possess the ability to quickly learn one, so that they may not become a burden on society. If you had a slave, then you could, if you had a skill, then you could enter into a mukatabat and free yourself. Or if you were sure that you will be able to learn. So the amount on the head of the slave, the state had to come in so that it will not be overly bloated to burden the slave. In determining the amount, the state would have to come in. So there were other measures, as I have mentioned, even when you go for war and you have the captives can teach people and free themselves. The captives can be paid for by their relatives, or sometimes the Holy Prophet ﷺ himself would, even out of his own benevolence, would just tell them to go. So one of the ways that people, colonial masters or people who enslave others, want to keep their grip on the slaves is that they ensure that they are not educated. They are not educated. However, the Holy Prophet ﷺ encouraged that you should teach your girls, and even further encouraged that you should teach slaves that are girls, and also slaves that are men. 1,500 years ago, the Holy Prophet ﷺ was advocating for girl child education. That is all inclusive, not only limited to free women, but also slaves. Girl child education waves, came in Ghana here in the 90s, where people were advocating for girl child education. So even now, you realize that the West, they always want to have an interest in the curriculum that we teach our children here, because they want to use that to have a certain form of grip on the society. They cascade their ideologies into the society, and so therefore the people will not be fully emancipated. There's a form of neo-colonialism in the system. So marrying a slave was made easy. People were told to educate their slaves. People were told to free slaves for very high prices. As far as the nearness of God the Almighty, people were asked as compulsory measures not to maltreat slaves, that if you maltreat a slave, you have to leave the slave, you have to free the slave, and so on and so forth. All these measures came together to abolish the slavery in the Islamic society. The question arises, as I mentioned, that why was it not done abruptly? Why was it not done abruptly? You see, as I mentioned earlier, that it is a concept and it's a practice. So you needed to tackle the mindset of the people so that when they are freed, they themselves will fit in a society. It's a very gradual and systematic process. If, for instance, as we saw, even in the case of the Black Americans, when all of a sudden they say that slavery has been abolished, these people were not allowed to have access to education. So what are they going to do? They were not allowed to have a scale. What are they going to do? They were only working for their masters. You have abrogated, abolished slavery, then they become a burden to the society. They become liability to the society. The society now has to take care of them, or they themselves would take to illegal ways of finding their means of livelihood. And so any society where this form of abolishment of slavery was adopted, you realize that even till today, you can see a level of recession among the people who were enslaved as against those who were not. So Islam took it one after the other, one after the other, one after the other. Today, you have Ghanaians who will still say that the Broni Bayebiaye. It is a form of slavery that they have accepted that we are free, but yet the shackles of slavery is still in their mindset, and they see the whites to be superior. They have things that they do well, in which they are superior in, but there are so many other things as well that they do not do well in at all. So as a race, we have good things in every race and people. But the form that Islam adopted, what was the result of it? The slaves that were freed, what kind of status did they get in the society? What was the result? We had people like Hazrat Zayd, radiallahu anhu. I mentioned him earlier. he was put in charge of so many armies, the commander of the militia. In every society, a commander is very much revered. And he was a free slave. And not only that, his son, Hazrat Usama, was also put in charge of armies. And you can imagine his son, Hazrat Usama, was very young, I think around 17, 18 years when he was put in charge of an army. The son of a freed slave. And some people, you see, at that time, there were the Akabir Sahaba, even alive at that time. You had the likes of Hazrat Umar, Hazrat Abu Bakr, Hazrat Abdul Rahman bin Auf, and all the, big names that you know. And that young boy was put in charge of an army. Imagine Hazrat Zaid, a free slave, and the cousin of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Hazrat Zainab, marrying. The Holy Prophet sallallahu gave Hazrat Zainab to Hazrat Zaid to marry. Such an honor that was given to a free slave. Hazrat Salim, Mawla Huzaifa. Hazrat Salim, who was a former slave of Huzaifa, he became one of the most learned people when it comes to the Holy Quran. And in an Islamic society, reverence is given to the Holy Quran. And so therefore, by extension, reverence given to those who know the Holy Quran very well. And Hazrat Salim became one of those who knew the Quran very well. It means that teaching and learning were not things that were kept away from them. I cannot mention and leave out Hazrat Bilal, radiallahu anhu. The Holy Prophet ﷺ was always so particular about the sentiments of the slaves. Let me give you an example. Once Hazrat Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu was passing by and he heard Hazrat Bilal and some people that had gathered commenting about Abu Sufyan that he's an enemy of Allah. And Hazrat Abu Bakr asked them that, is that how you talk about the chief of Quraysh? The Holy Prophet Hazrat Abu Bakr carried the issue to the Holy Prophet and told him that I saw them saying this, I heard them saying this, and this is what I told them. The Holy Prophet asked him that, are you sure that you didn't displease them? Are you sure that you didn't displease them? Because if you displease Bilal, you have displeased your Lord. Allahu Akbar. If you displease Bilal, you have displeased your Lord. Such a wonderful status that was given to Hazrat Bilal. Imagine the conquest of Makkah. The Prophet ﷺ has been subjected to a lot of atrocities. Eventually, he comes back as a triumphant leader, as a victorious leader. And then he gets possession of the Kaaba. At this point in time, the Prophet needs somebody to call Azan. He calls none other than Hazrat Bilal, radiallahu anhu, one who was once drawn on the scorching sand, on the ground of Makkah. He calls him and says, you would have that honor to climb on the Kaaba from the most abased places where you were drawn. You are going to the most highest and loftiest places in Makkah to call the Azan. Whilst he was being drawn, he kept repeating, Ahadun Ahad, Fardun Samad, Lam Yalid Walam Yulad, Walam Yakullahu Kufuwan Ahad. That it is Allah, one. He is one and alone. He is independent. He didn't give birth to anybody and nobody gave birth to him. And there is none like him. And he is being drawn on the land, on the floor. It is the worship of this Allah, the Almighty, that raised the status of Hazrat Bilal to this extent. So when we talk of slavery, the only form of servitude slavery, servitude that a Muslim knows is that which exists between him, a servant, and his Lord, Allah the Almighty. لن يستنكف المسيح أن يكون عبدا لله ولا الملائكة المقربون. This kind of slavery is such that Allah the Almighty says that Jesus, Masih, will not shy away from being called a servant of Allah, nor would the angels who are very close. Because it is in this kind of service, in this kind of worship, that a man can be raised from nothingness, from zero to hero. And when we talk about the hero, we are talking about the piety, which in the sight of Allah the Almighty becomes the measure, the true measure of superiority. So Islam had abolished slavery from its mindsets, from the mindsets of the people. It had abolished slavery practically from the people, had taken steps such that the slaves had gotten very lofty stations in front of Allah and even in the society. And when Hazrat Bilal radiallahu anhu was asked to climb on the Kaaba, of course, the Kaaba is tall and you cannot climb just like that. You have to climb on with some people's help. Some narrations say that it was Hazrat Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu and Hazrat Umar that he stood on their shoulders to climb. Both became khulafa. These were both very revered people from very noble families, and he climbed on their shoulders. That was the teaching of Islam. So today, if we are talking about the worship of God, that is the only form of worship or servitude that should be acceptable to us as Muslims. Not that we still worship Allah, and in our hearts we worship our own selfish desires. In our hearts we worship our own wayward desires. We worship a group of people because of the kind of money that they have, and so on and so forth. In the worship of Allah, the kind of slavery that we know in the world is not the kind of relationship that exists between a slave, which is the abd, and his Lord. When we talk of the slavery that we know, the master gives commands for his own good. Do this for me, do that for me. But when it comes to that relationship that exists between an abd and his Lord, the commandments that God gives, they are for the good of mankind. When we talk of slavery, the one the world knows, the beneficiary is the master. He benefits from the slavery. But when it comes to that which exists between an abd and his Lord, the beneficiary is the person himself who is serving Allah the Almighty. It is the slave who protects his master like a bodyguard when it comes to that the world knows. But when it comes to that which exists between believers and their Lord, it is Allah the Almighty who protects the believers even when they are asleep. And Hazrat Imam Mahdi alayhi salam has beautifully mentioned that if you become Allah's, then Allah will become yours. And even when you are asleep, He would be awake. Even when the enemies are planning against you, He is the one who is going to plan against them. The slave works to fulfill the wishes of his master in the one that we know in the world. But in the heavenly slavery, it is the master that fulfills the wishes of the abd. وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِي إِذَا دَعَانِ. In Surah Al-Baqarah, very close to the verses that talk about the month of Ramadan. And since we are in the month of Ramadan, when it was said that, "Oh, Holy Prophet of Allah, if my servants ask you about me, إِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ." Usually in the Holy Quran, when when questions are asked to the Holy Prophet Islam, Allah tells him that, "Qul," say, and then he answers. He answers through the Holy Prophet Islam. But this, Allah the Almighty says that, فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ. He answers it directly. I am very close. أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِي إِذَا دَعَانِ. I accept and respond to the cries of the one crying when he cries upon me. May Allah accept our supplications. May He make us such slaves, such worshippers, as our statuses would rise in His sight, and in the end of the day, we will be counted among the true slaves that didn't shy away from His worship when they were in the world. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.